Good morning, all. So, will I have to leave the country? It's a very interesting question. Probably not have to do it anytime soon. But if the Ethno-Nats get their way, I'll probably will have to leave. Because last night, I watched one of the most retarded videos I think I've ever seen right-wingers produce. And I always knew this day would come. So I've always been very centrist. I ally with the right wing a lot of the time over this past 10 years because they're against the sort of woke, anarcho-communist ideology. But, I've obviously never agreed with like the more further right components, of which ethno-nationalism is definitely on that far right spectrum. And two guys who I used to appreciate, I'll no longer be watching their content because of their opinions that they presented. And if you think that's a bit childish, just let me finish. They said they'd come across Ricky Doolan's post on Twitter and likewise had issue with Bob from Speaker's Corner. And they're both Christian. I'm very new to Christianity myself, and I do see that as being the better way forward. I do not see ethno-nationalism being a positive force overall. It has some components that I agree with, but overall it's very diluted. It's the same pie-in-the-sky nonsense that the communists try and present. It's detached from reality, ethno-nationalism. And they said, they like Bob from Bob's Corner, or at least I think Nate did, Mr. Hates Reviews. Said, he's not going to watch his stuff anymore. I was like, all right then, well, we can play that game too. On the side I prefer less. I mean, it's a shame because Mr. H Reviews, Nate, I've been watching him since Captain Marvel days, 2019, I think it would be around about 2018. I forget exactly which year. Sure, it was 2019 though. So yeah, 6 years I've been watching him. I'm not watching him anymore then if he's going to be so petty like that and play the same game. So I don't really agree with this ethno-nationalist stance that even if your children are mixed race, they aren't English. Like, what kind of cockamamie, nonsense, logical fallacy is that? Not pure English, obviously. But for an English person to have a foreign partner, wife, and then have children with them, and then them children to have no rights under your bizarre view of politics, is just untenable. You're not going to manage to do it, I don't think. There's just far too many families in the UK that have black relatives, mixed race relatives, Indians, because there is a lot of, interracial couples in the UK. It's not something that's really frowned upon here, like other places. But the ethno-nationalists don't appear to appreciate that. Which, it's tough shit. It's not their choice. Nobody decides who somebody else loves. We all decide for ourselves. And you can't decide who they're going to have children with. So, I do agree with the ethno-nationalist stance that the English ethnicity is to be protected, that to be English, you must have children with somebody who's English, or, Scottish, to be Scottish, obviously, because these are nationalities, not citizens, not citizenships. They're ethnicities, not nationalities, that's what I meant to say. And you can only be part of the ethnic group if you share genetic makeup and you've been raised in that culture by them. So I myself, I'm very, very unlikely to get an English wife in the future, both from my perspective and theirs, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of the women I would find attractive have appalling personalities, think that having a husband and children is like the worst, a fate worse than death, etc. They have this like eternal Peter Pan mentality, and they've got their expectations set so high now that they would look at me and think that I'm not sufficient. So it's just like a no-go. Dating is completely broken in the West, and it was broken by feminism and women. They were the ones who broke it. I mean, us men, we have an out. We can go to another country and find a wife. And then now what you're doing is you're presenting yet another hurdle for these people to be able to pass on their lineage by making a case that their children shouldn't be entitled to the same rights as the father. I mean, I get it with the mother, or if you flip the genders, the foreigner that was never born in that country is just married in. Maybe you don't give them full citizenship rights, sure. But the children, my children would still be English. They've come from me. So, to make the case that, I don't know how to say it without repeating myself. It's just bizarre. It's a bizarre notion. You're drawing the line in the wrong place. And this is what I've been trying to say to the left-wing walkie knobheads, is that you need to be more moderate and find where the line is, because the ethno-nats want to draw it all the way back at 1066. And the woke people don't want to draw any line. They want to say, oh, well, if you came here and you got citizenship after being here 5 years, you're just as British as I am, which is obviously nonsense. And then this is why we find the English identity is under attack and is being defended quite fiercely. And this is why we're getting these ethno-nats ideas coming into common discourse, because people want a solution and a tribe to fall back on. And I find it's the atheists that are falling back on ethnicity, whereas maybe people such as myself who are more religious, we're falling back on religion, and that it's Christians are okay, African Christians are fine, Filipinos are Christian and they're fine. It's Islam which is the issue. And that is something where the civ-nats and the ethno-nats agree. But the ethno-nats want this pie-in-the-sky utopia where they can go, anybody who's not white is kicked out of the country. So, like Anthony Joshua, out of the country. Ian Wright, out of the country. It's just bizarre. And, these people have said things I don't agree with. Ian Wright and Anthony Joshua and many others that are, either black or mixed race. Doesn't mean I want them out of the country, though. So yeah, I mean, it kind of worries me. I mean, I don't know if I'm too worried, because I think most reasonable people are probably going to look at the ethno-nationalist stance and think that it's just untenable and that it's just being racist for the sheer hell of it. Because the civic nationalist stance will work, because we have history to fall back on. Britain is, almost 1,000 years old, England anyway, sorry. But, last time we invaded was like 1066. We have a lot of history and culture to fall back on, unlike some other countries. So civic nationalism is, to my mind, the more reasonable approach to resolving the issues within the country. Ethnic nationalism is just going to cause the civil war that I've been talking about. It 100% will. Because you're going to have people in cities that have got friends and relatives, girlfriends, that can't trace their ancestry back over 200 years, 1,000 years, like the rest of us can. And they're going to defend that. And I'm certainly going to be pushing back on any ethno-nat discourse I see, but obviously things got really bad here, and it was like we ended up with a ethno-nationalist party in power, although I doubt this, but you never know what's going to happen at the minute. Then I would have to go and live in a country of country of origin from the wife that I would get, which would probably be the Philippines as things stand. So I'd have to make a decision. Do I have my family here and only I have rights? Or do I have my family in their country and I'm the only one who doesn't have rights? And as a fair person, whether this is suicidal empathy or not, that would be the solution I'd have to take for my own children's well-being. Because why would I bring them here and them just be third-class citizens? Because they'd be born here, they'd be like half white, they'd have English accents because they'd been born here, hopefully. That'd be the idea. And then the friends would be, potentially look down on them, bully them over the fact that, they're not true English or something. This is where we're getting into some grey areas, I think, with the whole ethnicity debate. And there needs to be a line drawn somewhere. And I'm very happy to join anybody who came in the last 5 years is out, barring people's wives, etc. I think that's quite reasonable. Get rid of the Boris wave and everything else. If maybe the furthest back I'd be happy to go to is 1997, but even then, I think that's going to cause lots of issues and is untenable. Wouldn't affect me too much. But what will affect me, and this is obviously why I make a video, because we all talk about things that we find interesting or affect us, that it would affect me if you're going to tell me that my children have no rights because they're mixed race. That being mixed race makes them lesser. When in actuality, if you really want to be like an evolutionary biologist about this, mixed race is preferable because they produce stronger children with better immune systems. You know, it's just like with breeding animals. If you keep the genetic pool too small, you start getting issues. This is why you see issues in the Jewish community with big noses, big ears, and all sorts of things because they've interbred too much. So you must, this is a bad way of phrasing it, but you must, outbreed. I mean, just for clarity, inbreeding is just having children with other humans. Outbreeding would be bestiality. That's the true definition of the terms. But for the purpose of this video, I'll just use the kind of terms that we all sort of commonly understand, even if they are misused. So yeah, I'm a bit unsure what to think at the minute. I do know I'll not be paying any attention to their silly podcast anymore, which is called The State of Politics. Bo and Nate can go get themselves fucked, I think, for attacking Ricky Doolin and Bob of Speaker's Corner. Because in my mind, they're still doing much more to unite people. Like, there are Africans in this country that have come here quite recently, right, that are Christian, and they love the United Kingdom. I was speaking to one very recently, and he loves that we brought Christianity to Zimbabwe. He loves that we brought English common law to Zimbabwe. I almost said Nigeria, but you could essentially make the same arguments, I suppose. And they would be on our side in a civic nationalist conflict. If you're going to conflict with the Islamic side and the communists, those Christian Africans will gravitate to our side. But if we use ethno-nationalist arguments, they're not going to. You're going to whittle down this pool to a very small amount of people. With civic nationalism, you're going to appeal to the culture, to why these people moved here. People very often moved here because they liked the British culture. And these Christian Africans and the Filipinos don't want it to be Islamic. But they're not going to take our side if you push the ethno-nonsense too much. And not as I've said, not everything the ethno-nats say is absolute nonsense. They're right with what they're saying about ethnicity, that ethnicity is not nationality, and you can't just become English. You're either born English with the DNA into the culture, into the heritage, or you're not. Those are the two scenarios. It's not like nationality, we can move there, get citizenship. Like if I wanted, I could go to America, get American citizenship, and then arguably I'm as American as the next guy. Because that's a nationality, not an ethnicity. English is an ethnicity. This is why obviously we're getting this problem now with ethno-nationalism. And I know that Sargon's made a video about ethno-nationalism essentially being a tautology. It's essentially the same word twice. But just because people are misusing the word to describe the thing does not mean the thing doesn't exist. Like incels exist, but incel is an oxymoron. To be celibate is to be celibate by choice. It can't be involuntary due to the nature of the word. You need a different word for it, but it's the word we all use, so it's the word we all understand. Same thing with ethno-nationalism. We all understand ethno-nationalism, what it means, broadly anyway. Although I think they're trying to redefine some of these meanings as happens in politics. But yeah, I'm very disappointed with them to go on the attack against essentially our allies, because they don't want to boot out everybody that's not white. You know what I mean? You're asking for trouble, and I don't think you'd win. But I don't know, things could go either way. Maybe there's enough sentiment in the country that people would want to just get rid of everybody who doesn't look the same. Very foolish, though. Very foolish. And I was, always of the opinion it'd be better to raise my family here, because it would be. You know, this is, to my opinion, the best country in the world. I wouldn't live anywhere else. I wouldn't live in Spain. I wouldn't live in Canada. I wouldn't live in Australia. I wouldn't live in the USA. I wouldn't live in Dubai. I wouldn't live in what's the other one? Qatar. Live in any of them places. Live here. You know, bro. That raises me here, but you're going to make it so that I can't. So like, why would I raise my children where they have no rights? You know what I mean? Very, very foolish. But we'll see what happens anyway. Let me know what you think of the comments. Obviously, if you're bellend, you're not going to have your comment be seen by anybody else. So be respectful, and I'll see you in the next one.